Ever open your mailbox to find a violation notice from your HOA for a trash can that was out 3 minutes too long? Or gotten a nasty gram about your unauthorized garden gnome? If you've ever felt the unique frustration of dealing with an overreaching homeowners association, you have found your people. Welcome to Behind the HOA Walls. This channel is your safe house from HOA drama and your strategic guide to taking back control. We dive deep into the real stories, the hidden bylaws, and the strategies you need to know to protect your peace, your privacy, and your property value. We decode the confusing rules, explore your legal rights, and share tips from experts and fellow homeowners. No topic is off limits. From fighting an unfair fine to understanding what your HOA can and cannot legally do. If you're ready to stop feeling powerless and start feeling empowered, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Bellhop Bell, we post new videos every week, and you won't want to miss our next deep dive. My story begins with a text message, not a friendly "how are you?" or "oh, want to grab a coffee?" No, this was a message from Brenda, HOA President Brenda, and it was a declaration of war over a few sheets of plywood. Look, I'm not a doomsday prepper. I don't have a bunker filled with canned beans and ammo, but I grew up on this stretch of Florida coastline. I remember the wail of the sirens for Hurricane Andrew as a kid, the way the house shook like a terrified animal. I remember the 3 weeks we spent without power after Wilma. So, when National Hurricane Center put a Category 4 storm on a direct path to your zip code, with that familiar, ominous cone of uncertainty pointing right at your front door, you don't just hope for the best. You prepare for the worst. My preparation was methodical, a ritual born of experience. On day 1, I filled every gas can I owned. I hit the grocery store for water, non-perishables, and batteries. On day 2, it was a hardware store, and that's where I bought the plywood. Beautiful, thick, 3/4-inch sheets of it. I spent all that afternoon and the entire next morning as the sky began to tinge with sickly yellow-gray, boarding up every window and every sliding glass door in my home. My hands were raw, my back ached, but with every screw I drove into the frame, I felt a little bubble of security inflate in my chest. That's when Brenda arrived. She didn't call. She didn't text. She just materialized on my driveway, a vision in pressed khaki capris and a visor, her face a mask of serene disapproval. She was the embodiment of the HOA's soul-crushing obsession with aesthetic conformity. "Michael," she said, her voice sweet as artificial sweetener, "I'm getting some concern calls." I lowered my cordless drill. "About the hurricane, Brenda?" "Yeah, me too. It's looking pretty nasty." "No, Michael. About the fortifications." She gestured dismissively at my freshly boarded-up living room window. "This is a clear violation of Section 4, Paragraph B of the Community Bylaws. Unapproved exterior modifications that detract from the community's uniform curb appeal. You're inciting panic. You're making the neighborhood look fearful." I stared at her, the sweat on my brow turning cold. "Incident panic? Brenda, it's a Category 4. The governor's about to issue a mandatory evacuation order." She waved a hand, as if swatting away a gnat. "Oh, they always overhype these things. It'll probably just be a little rain and wind. Last year, they said Hurricane Felix was a storm of the century, and we got a few palm fronds in the pool. You're overreacting, and you're bringing down the property values with this eyesore." The bubble of security in my chest popped, replaced by a hot, tight ball of anger. An eyesore? My house not getting its windows blown in is an eyesore. "It projects the wrong image," she said firmly. "We are a community of resilience, not fear. I strongly suggest you take these down. My husband, Ted, and I aren't boarding up. We're having a hurricane party." She offered a tight, condescending smile. "You should come. Relax a little." That's when the text message came, the one I mentioned. As she stood there, preaching about curb appeal in the face of an atmospheric sledgehammer, my phone buzzed. It was from Brenda, in our HOA group chat. A friendly reminder to all residents that per HOA guidelines, all exterior modifications, including temporary storm shutters, require Architectural Committee approval 30 days in advance. Let's all remain calm and not contribute to the panic. We are monitoring the situation. I looked from my phone to her face. She hadn't even had the decency to look down at her own phone. She just typed it out while talking to me. That was the moment the dynamic shifted. This was no longer just about a storm. This was a battle of ideologies. My pragmatism against her willful, privileged delusion. The emotional aftermath wasn't just anger. It was a deep, chilling certainty. She was living in a different reality. I didn't go to her party. I finished my boarding, packed a bag for myself and my dog, and as the first bands of rain started to lash the streets, I got in my truck, and I evacuated to a hotel inland. The last thing I saw as I drove away was Brenda's house. Pristine, unboarded, her windows gleaming, a silent, arrogant challenge to the storm. And I knew, with a cold knot in my stomach, that this wasn't going to end well. I thought the worst part would be the guilt if something happened. I never imagined the evidence would end up literally in my lap. The hotel room was a sterile, beige capsule of anxiety. I had the local news on, the volume low, the radar a mesmerizing, terrifying swirl of red and magenta. My phone was a lifeline, buzzing with updates from the neighborhood group chat. Most were from other evacuees like me, sharing news clips and worried emojis. Then there were Brenda's posts. Just a little breeze here. Ted is firing up the grill. The media is so dramatic. That was 2 hours before landfall. The comment was accompanied by a picture of her husband, Ted, grinning stupidly with a pair of tongs, their untouched, unboarded living room window in the background. Landfall happened in the dead of night. The hotel, 60 miles inland, still groaned under the wind. The power flickered. My phone, plugged into a portable battery, became my only window back home. A neighbor who had stubbornly stayed put, old Mr. Henderson from 3 streets over, was posting shaky, dark videos from his bathroom. The sound of the wind like a freight train that never passed. It was a primal, roaring sound that vibrated through the phone speaker and set my teeth on edge. Then, the messages from Brenda changed. The power is out. A tree just came down on the street. 10 minutes later, that was a loud crash. Sounded like it came from the back of the house. Her tone had shifted. The breezy, party-time confidence was gone, replaced by terse, clipped sentences. The emotional wave was turning from arrogance to unease. The peak of the storm was a period of pure, unadulterated terror. Even from a distance, Mr. Henderson's videos stopped. The news anchors, safe in their studios, were speaking in the hushed, grave tones reserved for catastrophe. I was refreshing my weather app, my neighborhood chat, and the news site simultaneously, a triage of digital panic. And then it happened, the message that made my blood run cold. It wasn't text. It was a video sent to the group chat. It was from Brenda. The video was dark, lit only by the frantic sweep of a flashlight. The audio was a chaotic mix of howling wind, the sound of shattering glass, and Brenda's screams, raw and shredded with panic. "The roof!" she was shrieking. "Ted, the roof is coming off. The whole thing. Oh my God." The video jerked wildly, the flashlight beam dancing across a ceiling that was visibly undulating, like a living thing. There was a sound I will never forget, a deep, groaning, splintering roar that dwarfed even the noise of the wind. It was the sound of a house being disassembled, nail by nail, beam by beam. The video cut out abruptly. Silence. For a full 5 minutes. The group chat was dead. No one typed a word. We were all, I imagine, staring at our screens, trying to process what we had just witnessed. The targeted shock wasn't just in the content, but in the source. It was Brenda, the voice of dismissive calm, screaming in primal fear. The purpose was served. It revealed the ultimate truth. This was not a little rain and wind. This was annihilation. Then, A single text from Mr. Henderson came through. Brenda's roof. It's just gone. The whole second story is gone. The storm raged for another hour, but its fury felt secondary now. The emotional core of the event had passed. The chat was filled with messages of shock and worry. Was Brenda okay? Was Ted? We were suddenly a community again, bound by shared horror, not HOA rules. I didn't sleep. I sat in that dark hotel room. The image of Brenda's dissolving ceiling burned onto the back of my eyelids. My anger at her was gone, replaced by a hollow human pity. And beneath that, a terrible, gnawing curiosity. Mr. Henderson had said the roof was gone. But where does a roof go when a hurricane takes it? I found out the answer to that question the next morning when I drove back home. And I found it waiting for me right in the middle of my lawn. The drive back was a journey through a war zone. Streets were impassable, choked with the corpses of ancient oak trees. Power lines lay coiled on the ground like dead snakes. Houses were missing shingles, siding whole sections of wall. The air smelled of salt, pine sap, and wet rot. My street was no different. It was a landscape of devastation. But my house stood. The plywood was scarred and pitted from flying debris, but it had held. Every window behind it was intact. A wave of relief so powerful it made my knees weak washed over me. My preparation, my so-called overreaction, had saved my home. I pulled into my driveway, my tires crunching over a carpet of twigs and shredded leaves. I got out, my eyes taking the damage to my property. A few fence panels were down. My mailbox was gone. And then I saw it. It wasn't just a few shingles. It wasn't a broken truss. It was a significant, identifiable section of a roof. A large, gabled section, covered in the distinctive, weathered terracotta tiles that were exclusive to the executive model homes in the development. The model Brenda lived in. Her roof, or a very large, very heavy piece of it, was in my yard. It lay there absurdly like a giant, crashed ceramic bird. It had taken out my prize-winning azalea bush and come to rest a mere 10 feet from my boarded-up bay window. I stood there, utterly still, the silence of the post-storm morning pressing in on me. The emotional wave was complex, a turbulent mix of schadenfreude, vindication, and residual, nagging concern for her safety. That's when I saw Brenda. She and Ted were picking through the rubble of their home 2 blocks down. From this distance, their house looked like a dollhouse that had been stepped on. The second story was indeed gone, open to the elements. Their white sofa was now a soggy, gray lump in what used to be their dining room. She must have felt my gaze. She looked up. Our eyes met across the 2 blocks of destruction. There was no wave, no shout. She just stared at me. I stared back. I didn't smile. I didn't glare. I just let the scene speak for itself. My intact, plywood-clad house, and the piece of her roof that had tried and failed to breach it. After a long moment, she looked away, her shoulders slumping in a way I'd never seen before. The fight was gone. The HOA authority was gone. All that was left was a woman standing in the ruins of her own making. You know, in that moment, I realized something. Preparing for disaster isn't about fear. It's about control. It's about stacking the odds in your favor. So when chaos hits, you have a foundation to stand on. It's like that feeling you get when you finally organize your digital life. Backing up your photos, securing your passwords. It's a quiet confidence. I use Mention a password manager / cloud service, e.g. NordPass, for that peace of mind, and I use plywood for a hurricane. The principle is the same. Control what you can so you can survive what you can't. The rest of the day was a blur of chainsawing and assessing damage. Neighbors helped each other, sharing generators and water. The social hierarchy of the HOA had been completely erased, replaced by a primal, communal need to survive. Brenda and Ted were seen later that day, being led away by family members to stay with them, their heads bowed. They didn't speak to anyone. I took a picture. I'm not proud of it, but I did. Picture my house, standing strong, with Brenda's roof tile monstrosity dominating the foreground. The evidence was undeniable. I thought about sending it to the HOA group chat, but sometimes the most powerful message is the one you don't have to send. Sometimes the truth is just there, lying in your yard for everyone to see. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood began the long, slow process of healing. The sound of hammers and saws replaced the roar of the wind. Blue tarps, the universal flag of disaster zones, dotted the landscape. My plywood came down, revealing pristine, untouched windows. The feeling of vindication was a warm, steady glow inside me. The HOA, as a functioning entity, was effectively dead. Who was going to find someone for an unapproved fence when half the fences were gone? Who was going to complain about lawn length when the lawns were covered in construction debris? Brenda and Ted never came back to live in the neighborhood. The damage to their house was a total loss. Rumor had it they were fighting with their insurance company. About a month after the storm, a final, official email was sent to the entire HOA mailing list. It was from Brenda. She was resigning, effective immediately, from the HOA board for personal reasons. The email was a dry, bureaucratic missive, but I could read the sheer, utter humiliation between every line. That evening, I was sitting on my porch, enjoying the unseasonably cool breeze. A car I didn't recognize pulled up slowly. It was Brenda. She got out alone. She looked older. The visor and khakis were gone, replaced with simple jeans and a t-shirt. She walked up my driveway, stopping at the edge of my lawn, right where her roof had finally come to rest. The scar in the grass was still visible. There was a long, heavy silence. The insurance adjuster said it was a failure of the roof truss system due to sustained uplift from hurricane-force winds. She said, her voice quiet, devoid of its former sugary sharpness. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the spot on my lawn. I just nodded. That sounds about right. She finally met my eyes. He said that if the windows had blown out, the pressure change inside the house would have. Well, it might have been worse. He said boarding them up was the smartest thing anyone on the street could have done. Another silence. This was the payoff. Not gloating, not revenge, but this quiet, uncomfortable admission. I was wrong, Michael, she said, the words seeming to cost her a great effort. I was wrong and you were right. I'm glad your house is okay. It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't friendly, but it was real. It was authentic. And in that context, it was everything. I simply said, I'm sorry about your house, Brenda. Truly. And the pettiness had been burned away by the storm. The victory wasn't her loss. It was in my survival and the validation of my choices. The schadenfreude had faded, leaving behind the simple, sobering truth of a neighbor who had lost everything due to arrogance. She gave a tight, little nod, got back in her car, and drove away. I never saw her again. So, that's the story of how an HOA Karen told me I was overreacting to a hurricane warning. The moral of the story isn't just, I told you so, though that's certainly a part of it. It's about trusting your instincts. It's about the value of preparing for the storm, whether that storm is made of wind and rain, or of other people's misplaced confidence and criticism. Don't ever let someone else's reality drown out your own common sense. My yard has healed now. The grass has grown back over the scar. But I kept one thing. A single broken terracotta tile. I keep it on my desk. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder. A reminder that sometimes being right is its own reward. And sometimes the proof lands right in your front yard. If you have a story about a neighborly dispute that ended in spectacularly satisfying fashion, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. And if you lived through a hurricane, you know the feeling. Hit that like button, subscribe for more real stories on the edge, and I'll see you in the next video.